Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sales Ops Effect. And today we have a lovely episode with me, Charlene Thompson, and Leo Crocker. Leo, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
I can, yes. Hi, Charlene. So I'm Leo Crocker. I'm the founder of LSC Creative. I help small businesses across the UK to build relationships and book meetings with their ideal clients on LinkedIn without relying on ads, without relying on messy, bad or automation or generic outreach. So our motto is don't send more, send better. So we don't send mass messages. Quality over quantity, we find always wins when it comes to LinkedIn outreach. And think of us as the antithesis of those horrible sales messages we've probably all received at some point, even today. We are the opposite of those messages. So that's a bit about me.
That is fantastic. And that's the reason why we are talking about lead generation because it is my platform of choice, even though I am also on TikTok and Instagram and a couple of other places. So let's start off then. Why LinkedIn specifically? So much of the buzz in the last however many years, particularly recently, where things going on politically, all of that buzz has been around TikTok. So why would you focus on LinkedIn when it's not one of the larger platforms?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think TikTok definitely has its place and is obviously growing and growing. I would say the fact that LinkedIn is actually the least crowded of the social media platforms, it presents the biggest opportunity right now. So you can flip that and see it as a positive. We're early. So LinkedIn isn't even in the top 15 social platforms by users. So I think on Instagram, 70% of users are actively posting, whereas only 3 million people post weekly on LinkedIn. So naturally, less noise means more opportunity. I think as well, sometimes people assume that LinkedIn is a bit too corporate or too crowded even. The reality is that most users consume content on the LinkedIn platform and they don't actually post themselves. So standing out has actually been, it's easier to do that on LinkedIn than it is on other platforms. So yeah, I think that's probably a couple of the main reasons why.
That's really interesting. Do you have any, sorry to put you on the spot, but do you have any statistics on what percent of users are people who post versus people who just consume on the different platforms? As in, like, would LinkedIn be better or worse than, say, Instagram?
Yeah, I think in terms of consumption, so people are posting much more regularly on Instagram. So, for instance, if you've got an Instagram account, I don't know the specific stats, but I would probably around 6 to 7 times more likely to post on Instagram than you are on LinkedIn. So, LinkedIn has a lot of silent users, people that like to consume content. And it's been really interesting to follow people recently saying that while people aren't actively engaging with their posts and the content they're posting on LinkedIn, they are still generating leads from it because people are still seeing it and then they're direct messaging them. So they're speaking with them directly. So I don't have any exact stats, but I know that a heck of a lot more people are actively using platforms like TikTok, like Instagram, than they are LinkedIn. But I think that sort of lulls people into a false sense of security that there's no potential on LinkedIn when actually it can be a bit of a silent platform sometimes, even though it doesn't feel like it with the amount of content you see there these days.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that leads me to my next question then. With engagement, so when you do hear people talking about lead generation and the metrics that they should be tracking, it's the number of followers, the numbers of subscribers, the numbers of comments and likes and things like that. But if you're on a platform where people are less likely to post, they're probably less likely to engage as well, is my opinion. That doesn't mean that they didn't like what you've done, but
Yeah.
LinkedIn is interesting in that it's very clear to other people who follow you what you've just liked and or what you've just reposted. Like, it says it very clearly. Yes. There's a tiny little picture on Instagram, but with LinkedIn, if you were at if you were employed somewhere and you didn't necessarily want your other colleagues to see what you've liked, because let's say it might reflect badly on the organization, that might lead people to be a little bit more hesitant. So looking at things like engagement, then should we be looking at engagement on LinkedIn in terms of our successes differently than we would for TikTok and Instagram?
Yeah, I think definitely. And that's one of the biggest differences between those platforms. So that's a really good point you make. I think with LinkedIn, a lot of that engagement, it will come silently, if you like. So you won't see that engagement because sometimes people are a bit shy about liking, commenting, because you're right. If you comment on posts, it will get you to the top of someone else's algorithm. So it's a lot more transparent in that sense. And that can be a really good thing for businesses. So something we really recommend now is if you want to become more active on LinkedIn and get more from the platform, really actively engage with people's posts and not just a one-word comment. Actually read their post, understand what they're trying to say, ask a question, provide some insightful comments, or provide some of your own input based on your own experiences. That is a great way, because you'll then end up at the top of someone's algorithm, to get in front of people without directly promoting your services. So it works both ways. So you definitely need to be a bit more careful on the recruitment side and the employment side. But in the same way, if you're a small business looking to utilize the platform, there is so much potential to indirectly sell on LinkedIn. Everyone's saying content is the new sales. So
Mm.
that's not just the content you're posting, that's the comments you're providing on other people's posts as well. So definitely something to bear in mind for small businesses. It's a great way to increase engagement.
And yeah, I agree with that. And I feel like, and I hope anyway, I think like comments are probably going to become more valuable now that we've got AI, because I also do use AI to help me write my posts, because I speak much better than I write, or I can do much more quickly anyway. But at least I know I've worked with the AI enough so that it is saying what I want it to say. But I was in a conversation on LinkedIn the other day where somebody was saying things feel a bit different. The algorithm is changing, LinkedIn is pushing video. So, is anybody really engaging anymore? Or what's it going to become if most of the posts are effectively AI? So what are your feelings around whether comments would become more AI or more human? And what do you think about the different styles of posts? Like, what would be more effective?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's, like anything, there are templates and there are formulas that work on LinkedIn, like I'm sure there are with Instagram, with TikTok, and so on. So there's a real balance at the moment between using AI and being authentic. And I think there is a place for both. We always champion a human-driven approach, whether that's commenting on posts, whether that's sending messages to people directly. But AI can still help with that. But it's really important, as you mentioned, to ensure that any AI you're using fully understands your persona, and that you're not just sending any messages that have been written by AI without analyzing them first and making sure that they sound like you. Because when AI first came out, we really worked against it. It was almost our biggest USP to never involve AI in the process. And then I realized that actually, for a lot of people, like you've mentioned, AI is such a fantastic tool when you've got all of these thoughts in your head and perhaps you're not the best at formulating those onto paper or onto your laptop, onto your computer. So using AI well is a great way to speed up processes, but allow you to reach out more effectively to people. So there is definitely a place for it, but it needs to be driven by humans still. So in terms of the types of posts that work, I think it's very clear there's certain, if you think of ChatGPT specifically, it will favor American spellings. It uses a particular type of hyphen or dash that makes it clear that it's been automated. So you've got to make sure that you're savvy to that and that you're changing that and that you're writing something authentically in your voice. So I would say using AI as a starting point and then putting your own spin on something or your own voice. Or if you can just authentically write yourself and you're good at that, I would definitely recommend doing that as well, because the bigger AI gets, I think that the easier, hopefully, it will be to actually understand when someone's writing as a human. One really interesting conversation I had the other day with someone, and we were discussing the sort of pros and cons of AI when it comes to LinkedIn and building relationships with people, is that maybe 10 years ago, if someone sent me a sales pitch or commented on a post of mine and there was a spelling mistake in that post, I would think, oh, that's a bit unprofessional. They've not really put the time and care into that message. Whereas now, if there's a spelling mistake in a post or a comment to me, and my first thought is, oh, that was definitely written by a human, I'm going to be more likely to engage with that post because I know they've not just sat behind AI and copy and pasted a message. So it's so interesting to see the way it's going and even my own psychology behind it. But yeah, definitely one to watch out for. And in terms of the type of posts that work, I think lines are being blurred between personal and business. I still would always suggest LinkedIn is a B2B, a business to business platform. So anything more personal you do post needs to still be educating people. And I think people like vulnerability. So talking about your own past challenges and how you've overcome them, mistakes that perhaps you've made in the past and how you've overcome them, or your own success stories. being personable and being authentic will always shine through. So I think there's no longer really a place for a generic post about what you do and the services you offer, maybe once in a blue moon, once a month. But generally, what people want is content about you, about what you're doing, about how you help, about the challenges you faced as a business and as a business owner, because it resonates a lot more with people. So the lines are definitely blurring between platforms, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because I've just seen so many conversations happening about it. And not to dive into AI too much, but as you were talking, I was thinking about the uproar, which I don't remember because I wasn't born then, when the calculator came in.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's just like you can do the maths in your head, but the calculator just makes it happen more quickly and is much more
uh-huh,
precise. But you then had to, as a human, our strengths were in making sure we put the right things into the calculator,
exactly.
you
Yeah,
know?
exactly that. I remember actually teachers used to always say when we were at school, you're not always going to walk around with a calculator in your pocket. So you've got to be
Mm,
careful. You've got to make sure you learn your times tables. And lo and behold, phones became more complex and
we have
we all
these.
have calculators in our pockets. So yeah, do you know what? I think AI is growing at such a pace. It'll be silly of me to suggest where it's going to go, even in the space of a year's time. It could be the case that when it comes to LinkedIn and reaching out to people and building relationships, it manages to overcome that hurdle of blurring the lines between anything that's human driven and AI driven. And perhaps AI will become so good, and it probably will, if I'm honest, that you will never be able to tell when a message has been written by a human. But I do think it will go full cycle. And even if it becomes as efficient as it can be, people are going to miss conversations like this and face-to-face networking events. I think there will always be a place for that, and there'll always be a certain portion of society that prefer that kind of contact. I think it's a chemical thing at the end of the day. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to see where that goes in the next few years. I've got no idea how much it's going to probably progress.
It's gonna be really interesting, but I've watched all my Terminator movies, so I'm prepared.
Black Mirror as well.
Oh my God. Although I haven't seen Black Mirror and I'm kind of afraid to watch it. Anyway,
Yes, it's
is
all
it?
coming through.
Is it? Okay, then. Okay, I'm gonna have to. It does make me think because it's probably gonna be like art, like we'll value human connection or the human experience, the human effort so much more because we know you've had to go out of your way to do that because it's gonna be
For
so much
sure.
easier with AI. So then when it comes to lead generation specifically, marketing and sales are two different things. Of course, I would be saying that. But marketing has so much more of a longer tail in a lot of cases than that really direct approach of going and targeting someone. So, how does your style of lead generation work?
Yeah, it's been interesting to see how it's progressed. So I used to, when I first started my marketing agency, we focused on SEO, we focused on Google Ads, website designs. However, the way I'd always got clients for myself was purely by sending really nice, personalized, human driven messages. And I would spend time on these messages, and people would resonate with that. And I'd get responses and I'd get on calls with people because I'd not just send the same copy and paste pitch where I'm talking about myself. I would always talk about them and how I could help them and really personalize those messages. So it took me about a year to figure out that actually that's what I should be doing for other people, because that's a really valuable tool that some people really struggle with. And a general marketing agency, there's so many brilliant ones, but it's a very saturated market, whereas this is something a little bit more unique. Over time, it's progressed. So we're in a position now where we are using AI in our business in the right way. So internally, we use AI to make processes better, but we always want to have that human driven approach to our outreach. So something we're always keeping to is any opening message that we send to someone, for instance, a direct message on LinkedIn, we will always do our homework on that person. What have they been posting on LinkedIn? Have they got testimonials, case studies, projects, a portfolio on their website that we can explore and we can complement them on? I think the more, and again, with AI growing so much every day, the more you can genuinely engage with a company and what they've been doing, the more research you do, the less likely that message is going to have been written by AI. So it's a real balance between quantity and quality, because with outreach, with anything, it's always somewhat a numbers game. However, you definitely don't need to send 500 copy and paste messages to get results. You could send 10 messages and see some fantastic results by making sure you're writing that copy in the right way. So it's a balance, and it's probably a bit more of a hybrid approach nowadays, but we will always keep that human driven element. That's our biggest USP, and that's how we help build our clients' profiles.
That makes complete sense. And so for people who are warming up to working with you then, so how do they do it on their own? As in, do they, when they're requesting to be connections of people on LinkedIn, do they send a note then? Do they wait a little while? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so I'm actually producing some video content in the next few months. So I'm hoping to kind of educate people on how to do it themselves, because I think it's really important to try and have your authentic voice in everything you do on LinkedIn. When it comes to connection requests, again, really interesting one. Sometimes actually sending a blank connection request can get as good response rates or better response rates than adding something in there. However, I would say think about the decision maker you're reaching out to. So I would always try and put myself in the shoes of my audience. If they're a CEO of a corporate with hundreds of employees, they're going to be getting reached out to dozens of times per day via phone call, email, LinkedIn, everywhere. In which case, it's going to make a lot more sense to highly personalize your connection request. So take a look at, have they posted anything recently on LinkedIn? Have they had any recent updates on their website? What have they specifically been doing that they've been posting about? The more you can show that you've researched them, the more likely that connection request is to cut through the noise, because they're probably getting multiple every day. Another example of where it would be useful to really personalize a connection request is for maybe smaller businesses, but fast growth businesses. So businesses that have just had funding or investment, they're going to be getting reached out to for a lot of reasons by different industries every day. So you've got to kind of use your brain a bit and understand who you're reaching out to. They're going to be getting approached so much that, again, you're going to want to personalize that connection request, and that's going to cut through the noise. You might find that for smaller businesses, that just sending blank connection requests works just as well. So truthfully, there's no right or wrong answer to that, but it's worth exploring the data, because if you're looking to connect with people, you can save time if you realize that you don't need to personalize those requests and you're getting better connection acceptance rates, then don't personalize it. But generally speaking, rule of thumb is a personalization will work better than a blank message.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And if someone connected but without a message, would you suggest that they send out a message like the next day or leave it for a bit?
Yeah, it depends what your goal is. So if you've connected with that person because you think you've got a product or service that would really benefit them and you really want to talk to them about that product, I would definitely let the dust settle, if you like. We'd never recommend sending a message straight away, because no matter how nice that message is, if there's any sort of sales pitch in there, people will pick up on that and they'll immediately think, oh, okay, you've connected with me just to sell me something straight away. So again, it's a balancing act. But if you send a message on day one just saying, thanks for adding me to your network, I've been taking a look at your site and I really love that project, well done on that, and then you leave that for a week or so, you might find that if they reply, you can kind of naturally build the conversation from there. If they don't reply, then maybe in a couple of weeks' time, you can go in with something a little bit more forward. So I would say it depends on your goal and what you're using that connection for, what you're using LinkedIn generally for. But always err on the side of caution. No one likes to feel like you've connected with them and then you've gone in their face straight away with a sales pitch. So always be careful of pitching.
Yeah. What's the weirdest message that you've ever received when somebody's tried to connect with you?
So I think the most common one, which always makes me laugh, and look, we've all made mistakes when reaching out to people. I'd be lying if I said I've never made a blunder when reaching out, because we're all human. However, I make it very clear on my page that I look at genuine, authentic, human-driven outreach. And now and then I'll get sent a message from someone promoting their AI tools for outreach. And I think, well, you've clearly used your AI tool to send that message, which I understand, that's their business. But for me, it just always makes me chuckle, because I think that's the antithesis of what I am as a business. And I can tell that you've done no research on me whatsoever. You've just set up a campaign. It's hit and hope. So those ones always make me chuckle. But I always understand. I'm very careful before sending any type of message back if I get sent that kind of message, because we've all been there. We've all made mistakes and everyone's learning as they go.
Particularly when it's coming from premium accounts as well. One thing that I get a lot, and audience, the reason why I'm saying that is because with the premium account, you've got lots of filters behind the scenes to be able to choose who you're actually going for. And I'm a project manager in terms of certifications, right? And the amount of messages that I get about construction, like project management in construction, it's like there's
Yeah.
nothing on my profile other than project manager to suggest that I have anything to do with the construction field.
That's it. It's hit and hope. And it's what they've done is they've typed in the keyword project management, not realizing that's an ambiguous keyword and could apply to multiple industries. So another good example for that is we work with a lot of kitchen companies, or luxury kitchen companies. So
Right.
if you were to do a search on LinkedIn and you typed in the word kitchens, well, that could be a company that sells kitchens, or it could be a kitchen, like a restaurant kitchen. So if I was to set up an automated campaign, I would start targeting loads of restaurants or sort of public kitchens, if you like, with a message that would just make no sense whatsoever. So again, that's why we'll always steer clear from automation where we can. And when we do use automation, we will always have a human behind it to check and to validate. I think that's a really important message for if you are going to use AI in your outreach.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, speaking of kitchens and restaurants, who do you think should be on LinkedIn? Because I've had to, over the course of my career, had to convince some of my friends to just build their profile out on there, because there's a presumption still that it's very tight and suited, and you're only supposed to be on there if you're in like a large corporate company, things like that. So who do you think should be on LinkedIn?
Everyone. I think everyone should be on LinkedIn because there's different reasons why you'd want to enter that platform. So even if you're mainly B2C, business to consumer, and you don't think that LinkedIn's going to have the right people there for you, well, you can use that for your profile and to get your personality across as a business person or as an employee. Posting content is really useful for employers. We're doing a talk tomorrow at Sheffield Hallam University to students, showing them how to optimize their LinkedIn profiles. So even a student that's not going to be looking to gain new customers from the platform, you can really get ahead of the game by understanding LinkedIn now, by posting relevant content, by showing that they're active on the platform. So I honestly think if you're looking for work or you're in work, LinkedIn is a really useful platform. But the misconception, which I understand, is that you have to be to be on that platform, or you have to be a big corporate. It's not the case. There's loads of space for small businesses. And going back to the kitchen example we gave, generally speaking, if we work with kitchen companies, most of what they do is retail. So they're reaching out to customers that might like a kitchen built or a kitchen refurbed. However, there's a different twist on that. A kitchen company might want to reach out to a property developer or an architect or an interior designer or an estate agent, because they will have access to their ideal clients. So when you can present, the idea of there could be opportunities for us to collaborate, there could be synergies between us, people are a lot more open to getting on calls because it's two-way. Whereas if you pitch someone and say, I'm a kitchen company, do you want a new kitchen? You kind of got to hit someone at the right time. So yeah, I really do think there's a space for everyone on LinkedIn.
That is really good. And with things changing with the algorithm and things like that, what parts of it are the best and worst for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one thing I've noticed recently with LinkedIn's algorithm is it favors content that is, well, two things really. So firstly, generally speaking, newer content gets seen the most. What we're noticing in 2025 and perhaps a couple of months before that, back end of last year, is that I'm getting likes on posts that I posted up to 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it favors certain types of content, and it's not always when you posted that content. It's not always how recent that content is. So again, that goes to show that high quality content that helps to educate your users, that shows some vulnerability about your journey, it's about the quality of the content. It's not so much about when it was posted. So that's a big thing I've learned in the last few months. And another thing is video content. In 2025, there's been a huge amount of noise around video content. And that's something that LinkedIn seems to be really favoring. So if you're preparing videos, even carousel posts as opposed to static images, you tend to get better results from that. It depends. If your content's really good and you're seeing success just with written posts, then carry on with that. Always go with the data.
That makes sense. And as well, I am really noticing the changes because they do have a dedicated video feed on mobile, but when I'm on my PC, which is how I mostly use it, I don't see that many videos. So it makes me wonder if their algorithm is doing things a certain way. Every now and again, I see a pop up that says, it's better on your phone. and thing. And even in terms of outreach in your inbox, I've sent a couple of messages recently that have been voice notes or video messages, which you can only do directly into the app from the app. You can't do it on PC unless you
Correct. Yeah, I've done
it.
the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it does make me wonder, like, where are they going with all of this?
Yeah, I think going back to your original question about kind of the differences between TikTok and LinkedIn is becoming almost a business style TikTok. So with video content being favored, the type of videos that are often favored as well are those TikTok style, short, sharp. You've got the subtitles up on the screen, kind of one word, so you can follow it very easily. Simplicity really works on LinkedIn, and I think even with written messages as well, there's ways to space those messages out. Putting every new sentence on a new line, it helps with readability, and LinkedIn will favor content that's easily consumable for its audience. So that would figure why perhaps you're seeing video content on your phone, because it's much easier to consume on your phone than it is on your desktop. And also generally on your phone, you're probably more likely to be in your own private space. Whereas if you're in an office, you're not going to be openly looking at video content. So LinkedIn will always be looking at ways to ensure it's getting the most from its users. So yeah, it's interesting you say that. I haven't noticed that myself, but it makes complete sense.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier on that you started out doing SEO and things like that. I know it's going to be a silly question, but is SEO still valuable or as valuable as it was, considering how expensive ads can be these days?
Yeah, I think so. I think SEO, it's where you've got to be careful is you need to understand it's a long-term game. You can get quick wins with local SEO, and there's certain marketing agencies that are brilliant at generating leads for businesses within the space of weeks or 2 to 3 months. But generally speaking, SEO is about your long-term presence on Google and building up authority, and that can take 9 to 12 months sometimes to really get that concrete presence. But if you're willing to invest, or if you've got your own team and you can do that yourself, that's really going to pay dividends in the long term, because once you have that established presence on Google, you're going to get a consistent flow of new monthly leads without having to spend money on ads. So SEO definitely still a place for it. And you can kind of bring SEO into LinkedIn as well. It's really important to optimize your LinkedIn profile with the right keywords. If we go back to the talk I'm doing to students, if they can specifically mention keywords that they're interested in and areas that they're looking to progress in and gain employment in, instead of saying, I'm a surveying student, you could say, I'm a surveyor or a surveying student interested in sustainability or heritage buildings. So when recruiters search for those specific roles, your profile is going to come up front and center. The same for small businesses. Use your LinkedIn profile wisely, use your personal profile wisely, include the right keywords, include words that people would type in to find your services on LinkedIn in the exact same way as SEO would work on Google and Bing.
That's really interesting. So when it comes to hashtags then, because again, I don't understand the algorithm, I don't understand anything. But with LinkedIn, when you go to specifically look at the hashtag page of whatever it is, like sales, you can see everything that's in sales. But it does feel like as if even when you actively choose to follow certain hashtags, you don't really see them
Yeah,
coming into your feed that much. I feel like it prioritizes your connections and even groups, considering that many people have a complete dislike for LinkedIn groups, understandably. So do they definitely still work in the background?
do you know what? It's a difficult one. I personally found I rarely put hashtags on my post. I don't find engagement increases by using them. If I'm honest, I've not studied the data enough to know really what the true stats are, but I definitely think it depends business to business. As a sort of LinkedIn outreach expert, I follow other experts in the industry, and there's always a lot of people saying you definitely do need hashtags. There's other people saying do not bother, it makes no difference. So I think again, you need to go with your own data. And I think that, as we said about your posts, whether you're doing video content, carousels, static images, written posts, go with what works for you, but make sure you build up a good bank of data. So for instance, do some posts with the right hashtags and keep the hashtags consistent, do them without, assess that over time instead of just one or two posts, and then understand what's working for you. So there's a lot of tools now where you can analyze LinkedIn data. And I think that's the best way to do it. Treat it on a case by case basis.
Yeah. And going back to what you were saying about time as we wrap up, where you were saying SEO can take 9 to 12 months. Thank you so much for saying that, because I've seen so many things around different marketing approaches, which treats marketing like as if it's sales, and sales has a much quicker cycle than marketing
Sure.
can. And people can go into it thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to spend all of this money sorting out my SEO, and expect to see results in
Mm.
2 or 3 months and then get disappointed. And it's like,
Yeah.
actually planning for long-term things as well as short-term things is the better way to go. And so I suppose with the active outreach of lead generation as you do it, that really does shrink that time.
For sure. Yeah. It's like anything. Good people say good things come to those that wait, but I think good things come to those that are consistent. And it's the same for LinkedIn with your SEO. If you are consistent with it and you've got high quality SEO, whether you're using an agency or whether you've got people internally to do that, you will get there, because the proof, people wouldn't be doing it if it didn't work. But you've got to be dedicated. You've got to have a sustainable approach to that. So what you don't want to do is be really consistent with it for 2 months, and then when things get busy, it falls off a cliff. Like, same goes for LinkedIn posting. The people that get best results on LinkedIn have been posting regularly multiple times a week, sometimes for years, if not certainly 6 to 9 months. So you're not going to get a lot of engagement straight away. But as we mentioned, with LinkedIn, it's often silent engagement. People are viewing your posts, but they might not be liking them yet. But the more consistent you become with that, and you make those incremental improvements each day, your posts are going to get better and better, and then you will get there with time. So yeah, I think it's really important as a marketing company to set expectations. If you think you can get quick results, for sure, tell people that, because it's a great selling point. But if you know for a fact, based on other companies you've worked with in that industry, that it's likely to take 6 to 9 months to get results, then make that very clear, because it means that when you then work with that client, you're going to have a better relationship. You've managed expectations, and you're going to get the breathing space to get that client the best results. Whereas if you overpromise and underdeliver, it's another story.
Yeah, because I imagine by the time people work with someone like you, they really need the help and they need it right now.
Yeah.
But if anything, like we were talking about other services as well, it's probably better that people ask for help before they're in dire need of it.
Exactly that. That's a really good way of summing it up. And I've made those mistakes. I've worked with clients that wanted results yesterday. And when you first start out, I'd be lying if I said I didn't work with clients because they were willing to pay me, because
Yeah.
that's what you do. You need to survive. So you end up taking on clients that you've not set the right boundaries with. As I say, that expected results yesterday, that are calling you all the time, and they're not healthy relationships, and you're never going to be able to deliver the right results for them. So working with people that have the right approach and understand, like you, that results are going to take X amount of time, it just allows for a better relationship from the outset, and you're much more likely to be able to then deliver those results for them.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm pretty sure we're going to have you on again so that we can talk about onboarding and how to
Sure.
plan for this stuff in advance, because I think that'd be really helpful as well. So thank you
I've got
so,
lots
so.
to say on that.
Oh yeah, like I'm looking forward to it already. Thank you so much for this. Where can people contact you?
Yeah, so it will be silly for me not to say LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is the best place to contact
Yeah.
me. I can give you my tag for that. My website, lsc-creative.co.uk. You can find out some more about us. There's some case studies there as well, although we are in a bit of a rebuild phase at the moment. And email is a great way to get in touch with me. My details are on my LinkedIn page. But yeah, I post regularly. I try to provide educational content and help people, show them how they can reach out in the right way to people on LinkedIn and build those relationships in an ethical manner. So if you want to learn more about that, then feel free to follow me, and hopefully I can provide some value.
Great. So I'll put those details in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Leo. And thank you, audience, for watching and listening. And please do stay tuned, because we'll do a part 2, Leo and I are talking
Sounds
about.
good. I'm definitely up for that.
All right, great. Fantastic. So thank you, everyone. I'll be speaking to you again next week.